Hey there, I'm Zoe. I've always been good at reading people. It's probably why I became a psychologist. I had my own private practice and spent most of my waking hours helping others sort out their problems. Ironic, right? Considering what happened later. Anyway, there I was, approaching my late 30s, when it hit me like a ton of bricks. I wanted a family. Crazy how that sneaks up on you. My best friend, Sarah, must have sensed my sudden desperation because she offered to set me up with her second cousin. "Come on, Zoe," she said over coffee one day. "He's a great guy. Smart, funny, and he's got a good job. What be you got to lose?" I sighed, stirring my latte absently. "I don't know, Sarah. Blind dates aren't really my thing." She rolled her eyes. "It's not a blind date if I show you his picture first. Besides, you two can chat online before meeting. It's perfect." That's how I found myself friend requesting Mark on social media later that evening. To my surprise, we hit it off right away. Mark was 38, just a year older than me, and he seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. Our chats were easy, flowing from one topic to the next without any awkward pauses. We chatted for weeks before finally agreeing to meet in person. I was nervous as hell, palms sweating as I waited for him at the coffee shop we'd chosen for our first date. When Mark walked in, I felt my breath catch. He was tall, with kind eyes and a warm smile. He spotted me and waved, making his way over to my table. "Zoe?" he asked, extending his hand. I nodded, returning his smile. "That's me. It's nice to finally meet you in person, Mark." He sat down across from me, and just like that, the nerves melted away. We talked for hours, losing track of time until the barista politely informed us they were closing. As we walked out into the cool evening air, Mark turned to me. "I had a great time, Zoe. Would you like to do this again sometime?" I didn't hesitate. "I'd love to." And just like that, I found myself falling headfirst into a relationship with Mark. We started seeing each other regularly, going on dinner dates, walks in the park, and even a few weekend getaways. As our relationship progressed, I noticed something peculiar about Mark. His phone was constantly buzzing with messages. At first, I didn't think much of it. We all have busy lives, right? But the frequency was unusual, even for a popular guy. One night, as we lay in bed after a nice dinner, his phone lit up for what felt like the 100th time. I couldn't help myself. "Busy night, huh?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. Mark glanced at his phone and smiled sheepishly. "Oh, it's just my mom. She likes to check in." I raised an eyebrow. "Your mom? At this hour?" He shrugged, looking a bit uncomfortable. "Yeah, we're pretty close. She raised me alone after my dad died when I was 5. I had pretty bad bronchial asthma as a kid. There were times she literally saved my life." I listened as Mark opened up about his childhood. The more he talked, the clearer the picture became. His mother wasn't just devoted, she was his entire world. "Sounds like you two have a special bond," I said, choosing my words carefully. Mark nodded enthusiastically. "We do. I owe her everything." As a psychologist, alarm bells were ringing in my head. The relationship Mark described sounded codependent, but I pushed those thoughts aside. I wasn't his therapist, I was his girlfriend. It wasn't my place to analyze their relationship. Weeks turned into months, and soon we'd been dating for nearly a year. Mark was sweet, attentive, and our relationship felt solid. But there was always this nagging feeling in the back of my mind about his relationship with his mother. One day, as we were having lunch at my place, Mark suddenly looked nervous. "Zoe," he began, fidgeting with his napkin. "I'd like you to meet my mom. I think you'll really like her. She's excited to meet you too." The next weekend, I found myself standing outside a modest 2-story house, my palms sweating. Mark squeezed my hand reassuringly as he rang the doorbell. The door swung open, revealing a petite woman with graying hair and Mark's kind eyes. She smiled warmly at us. You must be Zoe, she said, pulling me into an unexpected hug. I'm Helen. Come in, come in. As we settled in the living room, I couldn't help but notice how Helen's eyes never left Mark. She fussed over him, asking if he wanted a drink or a snack, completely ignoring my presence. I watched their interaction, feeling more like an observer than a participant. Helen dominated the conversation, constantly bringing up stories from Mark's childhood or fretting over his health. As we left a few hours later, I felt drained. Mark, on the other hand, seemed oblivious to the awkwardness. So, what did you think? He asked eagerly as we drove away. I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. Your mom clearly loves you very much. Mark beamed. She's great, isn't she? I knew you'd like her. I forced a smile, not having the heart to burst his bubble. But as we drove back to my place, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just witnessed something far more complex than a mother's love. 6 months flew by, and before I knew it, Mark was down on one knee, a sparkling ring in his hand. Despite my lingering concerns about his relationship with Helen, I said yes. I was in love, and I truly believed we could work through any issues together. We decided to move in together, into my apartment, of course. As we dove into wedding preparations, I quickly realized this wasn't going to be the fun, exciting experience I'd always imagined. Helen inserted herself into every decision, every detail. It wasn't just the wedding, either. Helen called constantly, always with some crisis that required Mark's immediate attention. One evening, as we were discussing flower arrangements, Mark's phone rang. He answered immediately, his face creasing with concern. What's wrong, Mom? The sink's leaking? I'll be right there. He hung up and turned to me apologetically. I've got to go help Mom. Her sink is leaking, and you know how she is with plumbers. This scene repeated itself almost daily. If it wasn't a leaky sink, it was a stubbed toe or a sad mood that only Mark could lift. And if he ever hesitated. After all I've done for you, Helen's voice would crack over the speakerphone. I just need a little help. Is that too much to ask? I couldn't take it anymore. One night, after Mark returned from yet another Helen emergency, I decided to broach the subject. Mark, I said gently, I think it might be helpful if we saw a couples therapist. Someone who could help us navigate this situation with your mom. I think her demands are a bit excessive. Excessive? Mark's voice rose. She raised me alone, Zoe. She saved my life multiple times. How can you call that excessive? I backpedaled, realizing I'd hit a nerve. I'm not saying she doesn't love you. I'm just worried about the impact on our relationship. Mark softened slightly. Okay, maybe you're right, but can we do it after the wedding? We're so busy right now, and I don't want to add more stress. I knew I should push harder, insist on addressing this before we tied the knot. But I was exhausted from fighting this invisible battle with Helen. So, against my better judgment, I agreed. The weeks flew by in a whirlwind of cake tastings, dress fittings, and endless phone calls with Helen. Before I knew it, we were just days away from the wedding. Despite the stress, I was excited. My friends had planned a bachelorette party, and I was looking forward to a night of fun without wedding talk or Helen drama. We hit our favorite bar, laughing and dancing. For the first time in months, I felt light, free from the constant tension of planning a wedding under Helen's watchful eye. Then my phone rang. Mark's name flashed on the screen. Zoe, his voice was tight with panic. Mom's in the hospital. Her blood pressure spiked. I'm heading there now. I quickly explained the situation to my friends and called a taxi. The ride to the hospital felt endless, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. The moment Helen saw me, her face crumpled. Oh, she moaned, dramatically covering her face with her hands. It's you. My blood pressure, it's your fault. All this wedding stress. I froze, shocked by the accusation. Helen peeked through her fingers, her eyes narrowing at me. I can't handle this right now, my poor heart. Mark turned to me, his expression apologetic but firm. "Zoe, could you wait outside? Just for a bit?" Stunned, I nodded and walked out, collapsing into a chair in the hallway. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, nurses and doctors bustling past me. Finally, I stood up, determined to understand what was happening. I approached the nurse's station, using every ounce of my professional demeanor. "Excuse me," I said to the doctor charting nearby. "I'm Zoe, Helen Johnson's future daughter-in-law. Could you tell me about her condition?" The doctor looked up, his expression neutral. "Mrs. Johnson's blood pressure is elevated, but not dangerously so. We're monitoring her, but there's no immediate cause for concern." I took a deep breath, weighing my next words carefully. "Doctor, I'm a psychologist. And I'm concerned that Mrs. Johnson might be dealing with some psychological issues. Has anyone evaluated her mental health?" The doctor's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's an interesting observation. We haven't done a psychological evaluation, but given what you're saying, it might be worth looking into. I'll make a note to refer her for an assessment." I nodded, grateful for his understanding. "Thank you, doctor. I appreciate your help." Returning to my seat in the hallway, I waited a bit longer, hoping Mark would emerge. But as the minutes ticked by, I realized he wasn't coming out anytime soon. Defeated, I sent him a text, heading home. "Call me when you can." I called another taxi and went back to our apartment. My phone buzzed with messages from my friends, asking where I'd disappeared to. I sent a quick apology, telling them to enjoy the rest of the night without me. It was past midnight when I heard the key in the lock. Mark shuffled in, looking exhausted. "Hey," he said softly. "You're still up." I sat up, trying to keep the hurt and anger out of my voice. "How's your mom?" He sighed, sinking into the armchair across from me. "She's okay. They're keeping her overnight for observation." I stayed until she fell asleep. She was so upset, Zoe. She kept asking me not to leave her alone. I couldn't hold back anymore. "Mark, do you really think that's all it is? Don't you see what's happening here?" He looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Zoe, please, not tonight. Can we just go to bed? I'm exhausted." I wanted to argue, to make him see reason. But looking at his tired face, I knew it was pointless. So I nodded, swallowing my frustration. The big day finally arrived. Mark pulled me aside just before the ceremony and took a deep breath. "Look, I know things have been tense with Mom lately. But I've made some arrangements to keep her happy today. I just need you to go along with it, please?" My heart sank. "What kind of arrangements?" Mark explained quickly. Helen had a special menu prepared for her, citing non-existent allergies. She'd be seated next to Mark at the head table, not with the other parents. The DJ had a list of her favorite songs to play. And, Mark added hesitantly, she wants to make a speech. I closed my eyes, counting to 10 in my head. "Okay," I said finally. "For you, for us." He kissed me gratefully, and I returned to my bridesmaids, plastering on a smile. The ceremony itself was beautiful. As I walked down the aisle, seeing Mark's face light up, I felt a surge of love that pushed all my doubts aside. For a moment, it was just us. The reception was an experience. True to Mark's word, Helen held court at our table, regaling everyone with stories of Mark's childhood. She barely acknowledged my presence, except to occasionally pat my hand condescendingly. When it came time for speeches, I watched in horror as Helen tottered up to the microphone, wine glass in hand. "My dear friends and family," she began, her voice wavering. "We're here to celebrate my only son's wedding day." She went on for what felt like hours, talking about Mark's childhood, his accomplishments, and how she'd sacrificed everything for him. I was mentioned exactly once, as an afterthought. As she finally wrapped up, Helen raised her glass. "To my son, and his wife. May they be as happy as Mark and I have always been." I downed my champagne in one gulp. The rest of the night passed in a blur. We danced, we laughed, we cut the cake. And through it all, Helen hovered, always ready to interject herself into every moment. The wedding is over, but as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, nothing changed. Helen called every day, sometimes multiple times a day. There was always some crisis, some reason she needed Mark's immediate attention. One day, as he grabbed his keys, I couldn't hold back anymore. "Mark, we need to talk about this. It's not healthy, for any of us." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I know, you're right. We should see someone. A therapist, like you suggested. Let's look into it this weekend." But when the weekend came, there was always some reason to postpone. Helen needed help with her grocery shopping. The lawn needed mowing. The cat needed to go to the vet. And so it went, week after week. Empty promises and endless excuses. 3 months into our marriage, I was at my wit's end. The constant intrusions from Helen, Mark's unwillingness to set boundaries, and the strain on our relationship were taking their toll. When my vacation time came around, I saw it as a golden opportunity. "Mark," I said one evening, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice, "let's go on a honeymoon. Just the two of us, away from everything. What do you say?" To my surprise and relief, Mark's face lit up. "That sounds amazing, Zoe. Where do you want to go?" We spent the next hour excitedly planning a tropical getaway. For the first time in months, I felt hopeful. This was our chance to reconnect, to remember why we fell in love in the first place. "I'll take care of everything," Mark promised. "The flights, the hotel, all of it. And when we get back, I promise we'll deal with the situation with Mom. Maybe look into that therapy we talked about." The day of our departure arrived, and I was practically bouncing with excitement as we drove to the airport. Mark seemed a bit distracted, but I chalked it up to pre-flight jitters. As we approached the check-in counter, Mark handed me my boarding pass. I glanced at it, then did a double take. "Economy?" I asked, confused. "I thought we were flying together." Mark shifted uncomfortably. "Yeah, about that. I had some credit card bonuses I could use, but there was only enough for one first-class ticket. I figured since I'm taller, it made sense for me to take it. It'll save us money overall." I stared at him, hurt and bewildered. "But, it's our honeymoon. Couldn't we have both flown economy and sat together?" "Come on, Zoe," he said, a hint of irritation in his voice. "Don't make a big deal out of this. It's just a few hours." Swallowing my disappointment, I tried one last time. "Okay, well, can I at least come to the first-class lounge with you before the flight? We could pay extra." "No," Mark cut me off quickly. "The ticket's in my name. They won't let you in." "Look, I've got to go check in. I'll see you on the other side, okay?" Before I could respond, he was gone, wheeling his suitcase towards the first-class check-in. Feeling deflated, I made my way through security and to the regular boarding lounge. As I sat there, trying to salvage my excitement for the trip, a familiar figure caught my eye. There, just outside the first-class lounge, I saw a flash of graying hair and a floral dress that looked suspiciously like something Helen would wear. My heart started racing. Was I imagining things? Had the stress of the past few months finally made me paranoid? But Mark's strange behavior, his insistence on flying first class alone, his refusal to let me into the lounge, it all suddenly made a horrible kind of sense. Before I could talk myself out of it, I marched up to the first-class lounge desk. "Excuse me," I said, pulling out my credit card. "I'd like to purchase access to the lounge, please." The attendant looked skeptical, but processed my payment. As she handed me the access card, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I might find. I pushed open the door to the lounge, my eyes scanning the plush seats and buffet tables. And there, in a quiet corner by the window, sat Mark and Helen, heads close together over cups of coffee. They looked comfortable, like they were embarking on their own little adventure. I took a deep breath and strode towards Mark and Helen, my heels clicking loudly on the polished floor. They both looked up as I approached, and I saw the color drain from Mark's face. "Zoe," he exclaimed, jumping to his feet. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," I replied, my voice ice cold. "Care to explain why you're here with your mother instead of your wife?" Mark glanced nervously around the lounge. "Zoe, please," he said in a low voice. "Let's not do this here. I can explain everything after we land, I promise." Before I could respond, Helen chimed in, her voice sickeningly sweet. "Oh, Zoe dear, what a surprise. Mark and I are just about to take off for a lovely first-class trip together. Isn't that nice? But what are you doing in this lounge?" Mark stepped between us, his face a mask of guilt and fear. "Zoe, I'm sorry. The truth is, there were enough bonus points for 2 first-class tickets. I thought Mom deserved a nice trip, and what about me, Mark?" I practically shouted, no longer caring about the scene we were causing. "I'm your wife. We're supposed to be starting our life together, but instead, you're jetting off with Mommy dearest while I'm shoved in economy like an afterthought." The lounge had gone completely silent. Every eye was on us, but I was beyond caring. "Do you have any idea what it's been like these past few months?" I continued, years of frustration pouring out. "The constant calls, the emergencies, the way you always put her first. And now this? How could you do this to me?" Mark reached out to touch my arm, but I jerked away. "Zoe, please," he pleaded. "You need to calm down. We can work this out. Once we're on vacation, we'll have time to talk, to get closer. We can fix this, I promise." I stared at him, suddenly feeling very calm and very, very tired. "Fix this?" I repeated quietly. "Mark, there's nothing left to fix. I'm going home and I'm filing for divorce." Mark's jaw dropped. "Divorce? Zoe, you can't be serious." But Helen cut him off, a triumphant smile spreading across her face. She stood up and linked her arm through Mark's. "Well, if that's how you feel, dear, I think it's for the best. Come along, Mark. We don't want to miss our flight." I watched in stunned silence as Helen led Mark away. He looked back at me once, his expression a mix of regret and relief, before they disappeared through the boarding gate. For a moment, I just stood there, feeling the weight of dozens of curious stares. Then, without a word, I turned on my heel and walked out of the lounge. As I made my way through the airport, my mind was oddly blank. I should have been crying, screaming, feeling something. But all I felt was a strange sense of liberation. I spent the next few hours gathering Mark's belongings. Clothes, books, the silly knickknacks his mother always bought him, I packed it all up methodically, my mind oddly calm. When I was done, I called a courier service and had everything sent to a nearby storage facility. The next day, I contacted a divorce lawyer. As I signed the preliminary paperwork, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. This was the right decision, I knew it in my bones. Instead of wallowing, I decided to use my vacation time for myself. I redecorated the apartment, erasing all traces of Mark. I reconnected with old friends, started yoga classes, and spent long hours reading books I'd been meaning to get to for years. A month passed, and my phone buzzed with a message from Mark. I stared at it for a long moment before opening it. "Zoe, please, can we talk?" I typed out a brief response. Storage facility number 247. Access code 8891. Your things are there. Divorce papers have been sent to your mother's address. Please sign and return them. Then I blocked his number. Returning to work was like a breath of fresh air. I threw myself into my practice with renewed energy. My experiences, painful as they were, had given me new insights into codependent relationships. I channeled this knowledge into a series of research papers, carefully anonymizing the details. To my surprise and delight, these papers caught the attention of the psychology department at the local college. They invited me to give a guest lecture, which turned into an offer for a part-time teaching position. It was at the college that I met James. He was a fellow professor in the psychology department, tall, with kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled. We bonded over shared research interests and a mutual love of terrible puns. As the weeks passed, James and I grew closer. He was everything Mark wasn't: independent, respectful of boundaries, and wonderfully self-assured. He had a teenage daughter from a previous marriage, and watching him balance his role as a father with his career and our budding relationship was a revelation. One evening, as we were grading papers together, my phone buzzed with a message from Sarah, my old friend who had originally set me up with Mark. "Hey Zoe," it read. "Thought you should know, Mark's still living with Helen. If anything, they seem even closer now. I'm so sorry for my part in all this. Hope you're doing okay." I stared at the message for a moment, then set my phone aside. James looked up, concern in his eyes. "Everything all right?" he asked. I smiled, realizing that for the first time in a long time, I truly was all right. "Yeah," I said. "Everything's fine." And it was. Mark and Helen's relationship was no longer my problem. I had my own life to live, my own path to follow. I remember my childhood like it was yesterday. The smell of my dad's aftershave, the sound of his keys jingling as he came home from work. I'm Alice, and this is my story. I was born into what you'd call an ordinary family. Mom, Dad, and me. But from the get-go, it was clear who my favorite was. Dad. He was my hero, my everything. Every day, I'd wait by the window, my nose pressed against the glass, waiting for his car to pull up. The moment I saw him, I'd bolt to the door, ready to jump into his arms. "There's my little princess," he'd say, scooping me up and spinning me around. I'd giggle, burying my face in his neck, breathing in that familiar scent that meant safety and love. Mom? Well, she was there. Physically, at least. Emotionally? Not so much. Sometimes I'd catch her looking at me with this weird expression, like I was some kind of burden she hadn't signed up for. But Dad made up for it. Every evening, rain or shine, we'd go for walks. He'd point out different trees, teach me about birds, or just let me ramble on about my day at kindergarten. Bedtime was the best. Dad would tuck me in, pull out a book, and transport us both to magical worlds. His voice would change for each character, making me laugh or gasp in all the right places. But when I turned 5, everything changed. I remember the day they sat me down. Mom looked relieved, Dad looked heartbroken. "Alice, honey," Dad started, his voice cracking. "Mommy and Daddy, we're not going to be living together anymore." I didn't understand at first. "Like when you go on business trips?" I asked. Mom cut in, her voice flat. "No, Alice, we're getting divorced. But don't worry, you'll be staying with your father. It's better this way." I looked at Dad, tears welling up in his eyes. He pulled me close, and I could feel him shaking. He said everything would be okay, but even at 5, I knew, nothing would ever be the same again. The divorce hit me hard, but Dad did his best to make things normal. We moved to a new neighborhood with a good school nearby. I remember the day we arrived at our new house. "What do you think, Alice?" Dad asked, his eyes hopeful. I looked at the unfamiliar building and felt a lump in my throat. "It's big," I managed to say. Dad knelt down beside me. "I know it's different, sweetheart. But we'll make it our home together, okay?" I nodded, trying to be brave for him. The new school was okay, I guess. I made some friends, but I missed my old life. Dad tried to keep our routines, walks in the evening, bedtime stories, but something had changed. There was a sadness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Mom? She became like a ghost in my life. She'd call sometimes, her voice distant and distracted. "How's school, Alice?" she'd ask, but I could tell she didn't really care about the answer. Once in a while, she'd take me for a weekend. It was always awkward, like we were strangers forced to spend time together. I'd come home to Dad, relief washing over me as I stepped through the door. One day, when I was 6, Dad sat me down with a serious look on his face. "Alice, honey, I've got some news," he said, fidgeting with his hands. "I've met someone. Her name is Sarah, and, well, we're getting married. Sarah is nice, I promise. You'll like her." I didn't want to like her. I wanted things to stay as they were, just me and Dad. But life had other plans. Sarah moved in, and suddenly our quiet house was full of noise and change. She tried to be nice, always smiling too brightly, asking too many questions. "Alice, sweetie, what would you like for dinner?" she'd ask, her voice syrupy sweet. "Whatever," I'd mutter, retreating to my room. Then came the biggest change of all. I was in the living room, watching TV, when Dad and Sarah came in, both grinning from ear to ear. "Alice, we have wonderful news," Sarah gushed. "You're going to be a big sister." I looked at Dad, hoping to see some sign that this was a joke. But he was beaming, his hand on Sarah's stomach. "Isn't it great, princess?" he said. "You'll have a little brother or sister to play with." I forced a smile, but inside, I felt like screaming. A baby? How could he do this? Didn't he love me enough? Months passed, and Sarah's belly grew bigger. Dad spent more and more time fussing over her, buying baby things, talking about names. I felt like I was fading into the background. The day the baby was born, I was left with a neighbor. When Dad finally came to get me, he looked exhausted but happy. "Come meet your baby brother, Alice," he said. At the hospital, I peered into the crib at the tiny, red-faced bundle. I looked at the baby, then at Dad, who was gazing at his new son with such love it made my heart hurt. Life changed fast after Tommy was born. Dad was completely wrapped up in his new family, and I felt like I was fading into the background. The walks, the bedtime stories, the special moments, they all disappeared, replaced by diaper changes and late-night feedings. Sarah, my stepmother, barely hid her annoyance with me. I'd catch her giving me these looks, like I was some unwanted houseguest who'd overstayed my welcome. One day, I overheard her talking to Dad in the kitchen. "John, why don't we see if Alice's mother wants her back? It might be better for everyone." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Dad's voice was sharp when he replied, "Absolutely not. Alice is my daughter, and this is her home. I expect you to treat her like your own." After that, Sarah was careful not to say anything outright mean to me, but the damage was done. I knew where I stood in her eyes, a burden, an obstacle to her perfect little family. As the years went by, I learned to fend for myself. Dad was always busy with Tommy, teaching him to walk, to talk, attending his little league games. I grew up in the shadows, becoming fiercely independent out of necessity. High school graduation came and went. Dad, true to his word, paid for my college tuition. "It's from the money your mom's been sending all these years," he explained. "I've been saving it for your education." I was surprised. I'd assumed Mom had just disappeared from my life completely. But I was grateful for the chance to get away, to start fresh in a new city. College flew by. I threw myself into my studies, determined to make something of myself. I graduated with a degree in financial management, feeling proud and accomplished. But when I returned home, reality hit me like a ton of bricks. The house felt different, smaller somehow. Sarah greeted me with a tight smile. "Oh, Alice, you're back. We weren't expecting you so soon." I lugged my bags upstairs, only to find my childhood bedroom completely transformed. Where my bed used to be, there was now a treadmill. My desk had been replaced by a huge TV and gaming console. The walls, once covered in my posters, were now bare. "Tommy needed a rec room," Sarah explained, not even trying to sound apologetic. "You can sleep on the couch in the living room. It's just temporary, right?" I stood there, staring at the stranger my room had become, feeling more out of place than ever. "Right," I mumbled. "Temporary." The job search was tough, but I finally landed an entry-level position at a local firm. The pay wasn't great, but it was a start. Every night, I'd scour apartment listings, looking for something, anything, I could afford. Maybe you could find a roommate, Dad suggested one evening, in a rare moment of attention. Split the rent? I nodded, adding another search parameter to my list. But decent, affordable apartments with potential roommates were hard to come by. So, I stayed. Every morning, I'd wake up on that uncomfortable couch, tiptoe around Tommy's toys scattered across the living room floor, and head to work. Every evening, I'd come back to Sarah's cold stares and Dad's distracted nods. Months dragged on, and I was still stuck in limbo, sleeping on the couch and searching for a way out. Tommy had started high school, and suddenly the house was abuzz with excitement, but not for me. "John, darling," Sarah cooed one evening, her voice sickly sweet. "Don't you think Tommy needs a car? All his friends are driving now." I nearly choked on my dinner. Tommy was barely 15, for crying out loud. Dad, ever the pushover when it came to his precious son, nodded. "You're right, honey. We'll go car shopping this weekend." And just like that, Tommy got a shiny new car. Never mind that he couldn't legally drive it yet. I bit my tongue, trying to swallow the bitterness rising in my throat. My birthday rolled around a few weeks later. For once, I decided to ask for something. I approached Dad cautiously. "Hey, Dad? I was wondering, could I maybe get a laptop for my birthday? I could pick up some freelance work online, make some extra money." Before Dad could respond, Sarah swooped in, her face twisted with anger. "A laptop? Are you serious, Alice? You're already living here rent-free, eating our food, and now you want more?" Her voice dripped with venom. "You're nothing but a money-grubbing freeloader." I stood there, shocked into silence, as she continued her tirade. "Have you no shame? Your father just paid for your entire college education, and here you are, asking for more expensive gifts." She was on a roll now, tears springing to her eyes in a dramatic display. "What about Tommy's future? At this rate, he'll never be able to go to college, because his greedy sister is bleeding us dry." "Sarah, that's enough." Dad's voice cut through her performance. "We have a separate account for Tommy's college fund. It's all taken care of, so please, calm down." Sarah huffed and stormed out of the room, leaving an uncomfortable silence in her wake. Dad sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "I'm sorry about that, Alice. We'll talk about the laptop later, okay?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As soon as I could, I escaped to the backyard, needing some air. Sitting on the old swing set, I let the tears I'd been holding back fall freely. Sarah's words echoed in my head, each one a dagger to my heart. I wiped my eyes, a new resolve settling over me. I wouldn't ask for anything ever again. I'd find a way to make it on my own, without their help or their judgment. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, life decided to prove me wrong. It was a quiet Tuesday evening when all hell broke loose. Dad burst into the living room, his face red with fury. "Where is it?" he bellowed, making me jump. "Where's my damn money?" Sarah and Tommy came running, eyes wide with shock. I sat there, frozen, as Dad continued his tirade. "Someone's been using my card. The one for Tommy's college fund." He was pacing now, hands shaking. "Jewelry stores, electronics. Who the hell's been spending my money?" His eyes landed on me, narrowing with suspicion. "Alice, did you take my cards? Have you been in my wallet?" I felt like I'd been doused in ice water. "What? No, Dad, I would never." But he wasn't listening. He was on a rampage, tearing through the room like a tornado. Sarah's voice cut through the chaos. "John, check her backpack. It's right there." Before I could protest, Dad grabbed my bag. I watched in horror as he dumped its contents onto the couch. Books, papers, pens, and there, gleaming in the midst of it all, was a brand new laptop. The room fell silent. I stared at the laptop, my mind reeling. I hadn't bought this. Dad's voice was dangerously low. "You thieving little..." "Dad, no. I didn't do this, I pleaded, panic rising in my throat. I don't know where that came from. And jewelry? Why would I buy jewelry? Call the police. Check the store cameras. You'll see it wasn't me. But my words fell on deaf ears. Sarah stepped forward, her face a mask of righteous indignation. John, can't you see? She has no respect for you. She's lying to your face, even with the evidence right in front of her. She turned to me, eyes glinting with triumph. We should have known you'd do something like this. Always wanting more, never satisfied with what you have. Dad's next words hit me like a physical blow. Get out. What? I whispered, not believing what I was hearing. Get out of my house, he roared. You ungrateful. I never want to see you again. Get your things and leave now. Numbly, I gathered what I could. Clothes, toiletries, my phone charger. It all went into a duffel bag I found in the closet. The whole time, Dad stood there, watching me with a mixture of anger and disgust that broke my heart. As I headed for the door, Sarah's parting shot hit me. We should have done this years ago. Good riddance to bad rubbish. The door slammed behind me, and just like that, I was alone. Homeless. Accused of a crime I didn't commit. As the reality of my situation sank in, I felt a strange mix of fear and relief. The house behind me had stopped being a home long ago. Maybe this was the push I needed to truly start my own life. That first night after being kicked out was a blur. I found myself in a dingy hostel, clutching my duffel bag like a lifeline. Sleep eluded me as I lay on the lumpy mattress, my mind racing with unanswered questions and fear for the future. The next day at work, I must have looked as lost as I felt. My colleague, Jessica, cornered me in the break room. All right, spill it. What's going on with you? She demanded, her concern evident. Before I knew it, I was pouring out the whole sordid story. Jessica listened, her eyes widening with each new detail. That's insane, she said when I finished. Then, without missing a beat, move in with me. I've been looking for a roommate anyway. We can split the rent. It'll be perfect. And just like that, I had a lifeline. I moved in with Jessica that weekend, grateful beyond words for her kindness. 2 years passed in a whirlwind. I threw myself into work, determined to prove to myself, and everyone else, that I could make it on my own. I didn't speak to Dad at all during this time. The pain of his betrayal was still too raw. Mom tried to reach out a few times, but our conversations were strained. It was clear Dad had told her about the alleged theft. Her disappointment was palpable, even over the phone. Eventually, those calls stopped too. But life has a way of moving forward, whether you're ready or not. I got promoted at work, started earning enough to consider my own place. I picked up new hobbies, yoga, painting, anything to keep my mind occupied. I even started dating again, though nothing serious. Finally, I took the plunge and rented my own apartment. It was small, but it was mine. No judgmental stares, no walking on eggshells. Just peace and independence. I was just settling into my new routine when the unexpected happened. There was a knock at my door one Saturday afternoon. I opened it, and there stood Dad. He looked older, more haggard than I remembered. His eyes were red-rimmed, like he'd been crying. Can I come in? He choked out. Your mother gave me the address. Alice, I need to talk to you. I stood there, arms crossed, waiting. Part of me wanted to scream at him, to throw him out like he'd done to me. But another part, a part one thought I'd buried, wanted desperately to hear what he had to say. Dad took a deep breath. I found out what really happened 2 years ago, he began, his voice shaking. It wasn't you. It was Sarah. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. What? He nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. She framed you. She's the one who took my credit cards, who bought all that stuff. I found jewelry, clothes, all hidden away in her things. Price tags still on them and everything. I sank onto the couch, my legs suddenly unable to support me. Dad's words washed over me, each one a mix of vindication and reopened wounds. I sat there, stunned, as Dad continued his story. His voice trembled with a mix of anger and regret as he recounted the events that led to this moment. After I found the jewelry, I started paying closer attention, he said, running a hand through his graying hair. One night, I caught Sarah red-handed, going through my wallet. She was taking my credit cards, Alice. I felt a lump form in my throat. All this time, I'd been right. But the vindication tasted bitter. Dad went on, his words tumbling out faster now. I confronted her, and it all came spilling out. She's been shopping compulsively for years. At first, she said it was all for Tommy. But now? She's maxed out credit cards, taken out loans, all for stuff we don't need. I shook my head, disbelief warring with a perverse sense of satisfaction. And the laptop? The one you found in my bag? Dad's face crumpled. She planted it there. Bought it with my card and slipped it into your things. God, Alice, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you. The apology hung in the air between us, heavy and insufficient. I told her she needed help, Dad continued. Begged her to see a therapist, to get treatment for her shopping addiction. But she refused. Said there was nothing wrong with her. I could picture it, Sarah, defiant and unapologetic. Just like she'd been the day they kicked me out. And then, Dad's voice dropped to a near whisper, she said she was right to frame you. That she'd do it again if she had the chance. The room seemed to tilt. I gripped the edge of the couch, steadying myself. That was it for me, Dad said. I filed for divorce the next day. Kicked her out of the house. I couldn't live with someone who'd hurt my daughter like that. He looked at me then, his eyes pleading. Alice, I know I don't deserve it, but please, can you forgive me? I was blind, and stupid, and I hurt you so badly. I'm so sorry. I stared at him, this man who had once been my hero. The father who'd read me bedtime stories and taught me to ride a bike. The same father who'd thrown me out without a second thought, who'd believed the worst of me so easily. For a moment, I was that scared, heartbroken girl again, standing on the sidewalk with nowhere to go. The pain of that betrayal washed over me anew. Dad, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I can't forgive you. Not now, maybe not ever. You didn't just kick me out. You believed I could do something so terrible. You didn't even try to hear my side. And for 2 years, Dad, you didn't call, didn't check if I was okay. Dad nodded, tears streaming down his face. I understand, he choked out. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I needed you to know the truth. I stood up, suddenly needing space. Thank you for telling me, but I think you should go now. As the door closed behind him, I sank to the floor, emotions overwhelming me. The truth was out, but it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like reopening a wound that had never really healed. After Dad left, I thought I'd finally have peace. But life had other plans. My phone started ringing incessantly, Mom, trying to play peacemaker. Alice, honey, she'd plead, your father is truly sorry. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive him? Each call left me more frustrated than the last. Mom, please. I'm not ready. I don't know if I'll ever be ready. But she wouldn't let up. One evening, I opened my door to find both my parents standing there. What are you doing here? I demanded, anger bubbling up inside me. Mom pushed past me into the apartment, Dad trailing behind looking sheepish. Alice, this has gone on long enough, she started, her voice stern. Your father made a mistake, but he's apologized. You have no right to hold this grudge. Think of all the good things he's done for you. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. No right? He kicked me out. He believed I was a thief. Where was all this support when I was sleeping on a friend's couch, trying to rebuild my life? Mom opened her mouth to argue, but I cut her off. No, I'm done. Both of you, please leave. And don't come back. If you keep pushing this, I'll get a restraining order. I mean it. The shock on their faces would have been comical if the situation wasn't so painful. Mom looked like she wanted to yell, but Dad put a hand on her arm. We understand, Alice, he said quietly. We'll go. But I'll be here when you're ready. If you're ever ready. As the door closed behind them, I felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. I sank onto my couch, desperate for some peace to heal. Weeks passed. Life went on. I threw myself into work, finding solace in the mundane routine of everyday life. One day, while grabbing coffee, I spotted a familiar face, Sarah, my ex-stepmother. She was leaving a casino, phone pressed to her ear. I know I owe you, I overheard her say, but I'm sure I'll win it back this time. Just need a little more time. I ducked out of sight, a mix of pity and satisfaction washing over me. Her actions had cost her everything, yet she was still in denial. Tommy, my stepbrother, occasionally sent me text messages. Short, awkward exchanges that never went deep. He was in college now, trying to forge his own path. Like me, he seemed to be keeping his distance from the family drama. Months turned into a year. I met someone, Mark. Kind, funny, understanding Mark. As our relationship grew serious, he asked about my family. I told him everything. Wow, he said, holding me close. You've been through so much. Whatever you decide about your parents, I'm here for you. Now, as I sit here twirling the engagement ring on my finger, I'm faced with a decision I never thought I'd have to make. Our wedding is months away, and I still don't know if I want my parents there. Part of me wants to extend an olive branch, to see if we can build something new from the ashes of our old relationship. Another part is terrified of letting them back in, of making myself vulnerable again. I look at the save the date cards on my coffee table, 2 envelopes set aside, one for Mom, one for Dad. My pen hovers over them, indecision paralyzing me. In the end, I set the pen down. I'm not ready to make this decision yet, and that's okay. I've learned that healing takes time, and forgiveness can't be forced.